So regulators can either have a rules-based approach or a principle-based approach to regulation. And let's look at the difference between these two. Again, one of the guaranteed questions, the rules-based approach, and then you've got the principle-based approach. You are very, very, I'm not going to say very likely, you are guaranteed to get the question on the difference between these two. Yes, we are going to upload these sessions to YouTube in the next few days, inshallah, sometime this week. So if you look at the YouTube link that I've just sent you a few minutes ago, you can subscribe to the channel. You will get a notification when new videos are uploaded. We will upload them, inshallah. So the difference between these two, just to give you a quick highlight on who uses these. The rules-based approach is preferred by the US, Asia, and the Middle East in general. And the principle-based approach is preferred by the UK and the Scandinavian countries. Of course, it has been proved or proven that neither of them is perfect. With both approaches, we still have criminal activity, we still have people breaking the rule, breaking the requirements, breaking the principles, either intentionally or unintentionally. And that's sad. So let's look at the difference between them. Usually in my classes, whenever we are studying the difference between rules and principle-based, we usually give an example of a company which has a basic rule, and that rule is you're not required to eat on your desk. Let me just take this quick attendance, Muhammad Likwaiti. So we usually have a quick example in the sessions, and that example is, let's assume that Kareem works with the Tadawul Academy, and Tadawul has a rule that says you're not allowed to eat on your desk. Kareem comes in the next day with his Starbucks coffee, and he drinks his coffee on his desk. Is Kareem breaking the rule? Some might argue and say, well, no, because the rule says you're not allowed to eat. He's not breaking the rule. Some would say, well, eating and drinking are basically interlinked, right? You do both at the same time. I mean, does the company really need to tell you, do not eat, do not drink, do not chew, do not do this every time? I mean, khalas, understand. If we say do not eat, we mean do not consume food and beverages, right? So these are two very different schools of thought. The first people who believe that Kareem did not break the rule because the law says do not eat, do not eat. So he didn't break the rule, he was drinking coffee. These are the rules-based approach. And they quite follow the law specifically and in quite detail. We call this, they follow the letter of the law. The letter of the law. They follow the law literally, word by word. What did the law says? What did the law say? It says, do not eat. Are you eating, Kareem? No, I'm not. I'm drinking. You're fine. Will I be punished? No. Will I be fired? No. Will I have to pay a fine? No. Regulators in the US, Asia, and the Middle East usually follow the rules-based. So they usually have a set of rules. And the compliance departments in most companies love the rules-based because the rules-based gives them a set of rules and they get to tick every rule that they follow. So the regulator, for example, I'm just giving an example. The regulator says employees are not allowed to eat on their desks. You look out at the employees. Are you eating? No, we're not. Fine. But we are not eating. We just followed that law. So many people call it box ticking because you are literally following the laws one by one and you are ticking the box. The laws are quite clear. They're quite straightforward. They're detailed. They're specific, and you follow them by word. We also call that prescriptive because they're quite explicit, quite clear, word by word. So that's the rules-based approach. And you are required, there's a certain, you are required to comply because you are, it's based on fear driven. You are worried on being punished more than anything else, because if you don't follow these words by word, these laws by word, you will be punished. That's the rules based. Those who believe that Kareem, when he comes into the office with his Starbucks, he's not breaking the rule because the rule says do not eat, those are the rules based. Sometimes called, in the exam you might get this, sometimes called statutory. Statutory means rules. Statutory based. Or prescriptive, but we've already said prescriptive here, so that's fine. Others said, no, well, Kareem, by drinking his coffee, he's breaking the law, because eating and drinking, understanding what the law is trying to say, by saying do not eat, the law actually means do not consume beverage or do not consume anything that is not proper for work. And drinking coffee is similar to eating. So those who follow the principle-based believe that. And the principle-based is quite different. The principle-based gives you general guidance. So when the company says, Kareem, do not eat, they're just guiding me. They are expecting me to understand what the law is trying to say. They're expecting me to understand that eating and drinking, even though they did not specify drinking, they expect me to understand from my ethics, from my principles. This is based on ethics and morals. I mean, come on, Kareem, you're not a child. Do I really need to tell you, do not eat, do not chew, do not drink? When we say do not eat, you should understand that what the law is trying to tell you, try to understand the spirit of the law. Not every letter of the law, not every word of the law. Understand the spirit. What is the law trying to tell you? And because of that, the principle-based approach is not explicit. It's actually implicit. It means that you need to understand between the lines what the law is trying to tell you, and you will be punished on the way you understand the law. And that's why, generally speaking, companies and their compliance departments do not like the principle-based approach, because it's not straightforward, it's not explicit, it's not direct, it's not clear. You cannot follow it by ticking boxes. You need to understand what the law is trying to tell you and follow that. It gives a certain flexibility to support innovation. It does, because, I mean, you don't have to follow strict laws. It's just general guidance. And gives you, although it gives the regulator, although it gives the company a certain flexibility when it comes to understanding these requirements, it also gives the regulator certain flexibility when it comes to punishing the company. It relies on ethics and it relies on morals, and that's why it's called the principle-based. Now, well, I'm not sure if you are going to be asked on where this is implemented. In some CISI exams, other than this one, yes, we do see questions in the exam that would say, which of the following countries is more likely to implement the principle-based approach or the rules-based approach? So it doesn't hurt for you to know these things. So you need to know the country. One more question in the exam might be, if a regulator decides to convert from the rules-based approach to the principle-based approach, obviously there are going to be changes to the rule book, right? Because every regulator has a rule book, the rules that you have to follow. So what do you expect that these changes might be? Will the rule book become bigger, or will the rule book reduce? That's a question in the exam. A movement or a conversion from the rules-based approach to the principle-based approach will cause a reduction in rules. Because under the rules-based, the company has to say, do not eat, Kareem. Kareem will drink. Do not drink, Kareem. Kareem might chew some gum. Do not chew, Kareem. So they have to specify every single scenario that Kareem has to follow. Imagine the rule book is going to be massive. Whereas under the principle approach, they don't. They might just say, don't consume anything that might not be appropriate for work. Well, what do you mean? We don't know. You have to analyze that. Well, be clearer. Nope. Do not consume any materials that are not, or any stuff that are not appropriate for work. Do you mean marijuana? We mean anything. So in this case, the regulator has left it open for you to interpret what they're trying to say. And of course, you will be punished on what they're trying to say, right? So because the rules-based approach needs to include a scenario, it needs to include a rule for every single scenario that the company goes through, the rule book is massive. A movement from the rules-based to the principle-based will bring in a reduction in rules or a reduction in the rule book. The rule book will shrink. A big chance it will shrink. And the FCA saw, and the UK saw that once they moved from the rules-based to the principle-based approach, the number of rules went down a lot. When we're talking about the regulation, the movement from the FSA to the FCA in 2008, there was a reduction in the rules. So that's a question you might get in the exam. Another one you might get in the exam might be, the rules-based approach is unfair. It's unfair to certain people in the market. Who is it unfair mostly to? So you might get a question, might say, is the rules-based approach is unfair, particularly to whom? Is it unfair to large companies mostly, or is it unfair to smaller companies mostly? And the answer is, it is mostly unfair to small companies. Actually, large companies love the rules-based approach. Just give them a bunch of rules and then they will follow, or they will circumvent, go behind. They will circumvent the rules. And the reason for that is that large companies, and the larger the company, the larger the legal team that it has. So you know some companies in the United States, and the United States is very famous for being a rules-based regulator. You see a legal team which is as big as probably most of the other departments, massive legal departments. And of course, they've got many functions, right? They've got a function of defending the company against legal suits, and they've got many other functions. But one of these functions might be understand the rules that we've gotten from the regulator. Good, now that we understand them, find a way for us around these rules. So if the regulator says we're not allowed to eat, technically, did they say anything about drinking? They didn't. Fine. Let's have our employees drink their coffees. Someone will say in the legal team, well, don't you think eating and drinking are the same thing? He will be yelled at, shut up. The regulator did not say anything about drinking. So we are going to bring our drinks to work. You see, large companies, because they have massive legal teams, they are able to circumvent, find loopholes. These massive, very highly paid legal teams will find loopholes for the company to go around. For small companies, for example, like us, Tadawul, we don't even have a legal team. We do know lawyers, but we've never had to use them. We've never had to pay them. We don't have any legal team. So if there are other companies around the world which are massive training companies or educational companies, they can easily find a way around the rules. We can't, because we don't have a massive legal team like they do. So rules-based approach is incredibly unfair to smaller companies because of their inability to find loopholes. Basically means that large companies are able to find loopholes. So it is believed that if a regulator moves from the rules-based approach to the principle-based approach, the regulator might become a bit more fairer to all of the companies in the market, rather than to just large companies.